Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of RILN Opinion Plus, a monthly series airing on Fridays. This is a space for our opinions where we talk about current events and questions the Latino community is curious about. Today, we are joined by Tomás Ávila, Associate Director in Office of Equity and Opportunity in Rhode Island. Welcome, Tomás. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you, Brian. It is my pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. Looking forward to this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we wanted to start off by asking, so you work with the Office of Equity and Opportunity in Rhode Island. Can you explain more on, can you start off by explaining how has the pandemic impacted the work that you do with diversity, inclusivity, and opportunity in Rhode Island?
Yes, very much what we do is we have two mandates from the state legislature. One is to deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion across the state, and with that responsibility, part of the office responsibility is to diversify the state employment so that it will reflect the demographics of Rhode Island. So that is the first part of it. The second part of it is actually make sure that we recruit a diversified set of individuals who can potentially be employed by the state. On the other hand, we have the responsibility of the minority business enterprise, and in that end is our responsibility is to make sure that the minority business enterprise get their due fair share of the investment that the state does in expenses. And what I mean by that is that back in 1986, the state passed a law that said that the minority community is entitled to 10% of all the expenses that the state does. So it is my responsibility to make sure that that happens, that 10%, but at the same time, making sure that the minority business enterprise has the ability to participate in the biddings that the state does and therefore increase their opportunity. As far as the pandemic really had an impact in the office and what we do. I'll start with the MBE side of it. So in the minority business enterprise, because of the pandemic, the 10% mandate and the usage of the minority business enterprise was suspended by the previous governor based on the emergency executive order that was put in place. So what that means that actually did not give the minority business enterprise an opportunity to participate in the expenses that the state did on that. But fortunately, that has been reversed. On the equity side, and the diversity. Needless to say, the limitation of people going out, people participating freely in society, put a damper in the state ability to recruit. So those are the effects that the pandemic has had in what we do and what we bring to the community.
That's very, very interesting. So you mentioned that within the pandemic, it's created some barriers in terms of recruiting people from different demographics. Can you tell us a little bit more on the demographics of Rhode Island and how have the demographics of Rhode Island have changed throughout time, and what has made it what it is today?
Yes, so I'll go back to 40 years ago when actually the highlight of the changes in the environmental demographic took place. Well, it started. And it was that 40 years ago, Rhode Island was a state that was 90% white. And very much when the census came out in 1990, he stated that Rhode Island had become 86% white, which obviously means that the diversity had increased. To fast forward to the present, Rhode Island, something like 19% of Rhode Islanders are diverse individuals and is less white. And then there is a projection that the census has that by 2043, Rhode Island is going to be a majority minority state. What that means is that very much the white community, which one has been the majority, will eventually become the minority, and the total of minorities will become the majority, with the Latino being the greater part of that. To give you a sense, Brian, in the last census, 2010 census, The Latino community in Rhode Island grew by 45%. The Asian community grew by 18%, and the African American community grew by 7%. So all of that diversification has had an impact across the state of Rhode Island. And I use the city of Cranston as an example, where a lot of minorities have migrated during those 40 years. Up until the 2010 census, Cranston was the third largest city in Rhode Island, but the influx of minorities and immigrants in general, today, Cranston is the second largest city, taken over from Warwick, which used to be the second largest city. So that's the impact that diversity is having in Rhode Island. So the state is aware of that diversification that's taking place and is trying to stay online with that demographic and have it reflected in the employment as we hire people for different positions across the state.
That is very interesting. So it seems like, you know, within the last 40 years, that Rhode Island has become more and more diverse from people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and soon within the near future, that'll be a majority minority population. So with that being said, within the events of 2020, with the death of George Floyd, that raised worldwide topics and thoughts on what we have to do to improve diversity, equity, inclusivity within our work environments. Can you explain more on like how have those events impacted the way that you incorporate more of those values within the workplace in terms of not just bringing in more ethnic diversity, but making sure that they are included, that they it can grow and have the potential to become meaningful leaders within Rhode Island?
Yes, definitely. And yes, the death of Floyd had an impact in the state employment, and just like everywhere across the world, really. And definitely, the state has made some adjustments based on that. Needless to say, his death raised the consciousness that it's not good enough to hire people, but it's communities and corporations and government have a responsibility to actually help and make sure that those individuals can grow within the company. And so, for instance, in the state, one they still hiring diversity, but there is two levels at the state that pretty much haven't really been diversified and have been difficult, which is what they call the level A, which is the top of it, and level B, which is the second tier in government. So, for instance, I am a level B, and I report to a director at level A. And so, where I sit right now, the position that I sit, there are not too many diverse individuals. So, my job is to make sure that that changes, that increase, and that we bring more people at the level that I am, level B, but also at the level A, because every other department across the state, there's like 22 departments altogether. All those departments are still majority white individuals. And my job and my responsibility and the state desire and mission is that that will eventually change, that will eventually bring parity. And the parity is that at the lower level, which is typical in society, the diversification is not a problem because we have individuals, at all within those levels who are mostly minority, and that has kept up, and in some cases, it has surpassed the demographics of the minority community. But at the higher level is where the bigger problem is. And again, with Floyd's death, the consciousness was raised that okay, so we need to be more intentional. We need to be more practical to make sure that just as we bring in individuals, we also are promoting within and providing opportunities for individuals to seek those higher positions and be able to eventually be part of what the state is looking for.
Those are really, really interesting points. So, as the research that many other sociologists have made is that it's very easy to incorporate diversity, but when you move up the hierarchies of any corporation, it gets very hard. It becomes very hard for diversity to foster and to exist. So, with that being said, can you go deeper on what obstacles exist within Rhode Island that make minorities struggle to move up in professional settings and professional leadership roles within corporate America? Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Sure, and I would say that Rhode Island is no different than the rest of the country. And is as we know, very much in corporate America, there is a glass ceiling that, whether intentional or unintentional, it exists, and actually, it has limited the growth of the minority community. As I mentioned, it's no different in Rhode Island. That's what has happened. That glass ceiling has stopped the growth of many individuals. And you know what happens when that takes place, Brian, is people get frustrated, and usually their ultimate decision is to leave. So when people leave, really, okay, so they leave and seek opportunity someplace else. Well, that actually decreases whatever gain the state has had, because this individual who very much has been in a path to get to the higher level is not there any longer. But at the same time, I also understand the frustration of waiting for years, knowing that you are qualified, you have the qualification, you have everything that the such position require, and then you keep being bypassed and overpassed by other individuals who may be just as qualified as you are, or maybe less qualified than you are. So those are some of the issues. And then on the other part is what I was reading an article earlier this last week, and and I read something that caught my attention, but it's true. Is and one of the recommendations that they give regarding diversity is that managers need to break the mold of hiring individuals who look like them, and really changed to hiring individuals who qualify just as they do to be in the positions that they are. And it's something that I actually have been implementing since I've been here. And it is, and I advise managers to s- step away from looking at individuals just because they look like them, and they actually reflect who they will want in that position, and actually look at the individuals for their qualification and their competitiveness against everyone else, and hire the best qualified candidate, not necessarily the best one based on, again, because he or she looked like me. You know, I am fortunate. I am very diverse in my family, so I had always dealt with diversity throughout my life. So to me, it's been a simple thing. It's like, okay, I cannot hire everybody who look just like me, but I also have to understand that I need to be more careful to select other individuals that do not reflect me, but fulfill the qualifications that we are looking for. And that's what I'm promoting in this position with other managers and across the state. And again, with the goal to eventually bring qualified individuals to fulfill those positions, but most importantly, to close the gap between the majority and us.
Those are all really, really great points, Tomas. So I wanted to ask for my last question. What do you think are some resources that the people of Rhode Island should know and should use in order to accomplish the goals that you've just highlighted?
Well, I will invite everyone to uh, there's a site, Apply RI, very simple, www apply RI. That's where all the jobs are posted in the state of Rhode Island. All the positions are there. And very much, that's an entryway to find out what is available. That is an entryway to seek positions that actually match your qualifications. And also, that is the entryway to opportunities. That's where people are going to see you. For instance, I visit that site regularly, and that's where I see, okay, who has applied, who could be a potential individual, not just for my office, but for any other office across the state. And I may be able to recommend that individual to another manager since I'm not hiring. And the potential, once you are in that site, is great, that eventually you are going to get selected, and that eventually you're going to become part of the state employee of Rhode Island. So that's what I invite everyone to, www.applyri.com, and that's the opening the door to potential opportunities.
Thank you for talking with us, Tomas, and for being our guest on RILN Opinion Plus this week.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation again.
And join us next time for another episode. For more information about our discussion today, check out our web story on RILatinonews.com. Follow us on Twitter at RI Latino News. I'm Bron Zapata with RILN Opinion Plus, and we'll see you next time.